We're going to get into it there with Spectacular Spider-Man. So, Spectacular Spider-Man, like we said, was a short-lived Spider-Man animated series. It is, for a lot of people, considered one of the better Spider-Man series, if not the best one. It's usually this one, Spectacular Spider-Man, or the '90s Spider-Man that get considered as the best Spider-Man animated series.
To the point where when we were talking about doing like one of the animated Spider-Man shows, I suggested this. You had the '90s series, and we put a poll up. I was kind of surprised that that this show got as much love as it did, because I remember seeing it on Netflix in the early aughts, and then it just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, this came out all the way. I forgot. I didn't know it came out this late. It came out in '08. Was when it first dropped. So I was like, wow, I can't believe it came out that long ago. So yeah, that was kind of a big surprise there, how late it came out. Yeah, and I remember watching the series way back, and then I remember seeing some reruns of it later on. But it's been a long time since I've seen this animated series. Hunter, have you seen this animated series before?
So I have seen it. I didn't finish it, if memory serves. It's been a minute since I've seen this, but I remember a couple episodes that definitely stood out to me. I remember Natural Selection was one episode. I was like,
Ooh.
God damn, like that episode I remember very vividly. Which ironically, the '90s cartoon also starts off with a lizard based episode, which is a great fucking episode from the '90s show. But to both your points, Spectacular Spider-Man is very much overlooked, like criminally so. And Spider-Man's my favorite superhero ever. So when this only got 2 seasons, I was like, God damn, that sucks. Like I would have liked, another season, if not, two more. But
Yeah,
it's one of those, yeah.
yeah. In hindsight, it's kind of not shocking, because this was created and showrun by Greg Weisman, who we all know now as the showrunner for Young Justice. He's also written for Batman, Brave and the Bold, Green Arrow, Gargoyles, and that 2004 The Batman series. So he knows his way around television animation, and at least at this time with Young Justice and then Spectacular, both of them were absolutely critically beloved, but were both canceled before their time.
Yeah, but Young Justice that eventually came back in various different forms. Now they're on Young Justice Phantoms now, which
Yeah,
is
after like I think 9 years, the show finally made a comeback. So maybe there's hope for Spectacular.
yeah.
Just
So
fingers crossed.
which you can watch Young Justice now on HBO Max, where you can now. I'm
Which you
surprised.
should if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Sony doesn't have their own streaming service by now. I'm surprised.
Give
Uh,
it time.
yeah, Sony Plus or yeah, something like that. I'm surprised they haven't done that because every studio now is doing their own streaming plus. Paramount.
Which thanks, by the way, everyone for doing that shit. It's fucking terrible.
And just to speak to how like under how overlooked the show is, this is near impossible to find on streaming. I have it here because I think the international rights allow it to be on Netflix, but where was it available for you guys? Because I bought the Blu-ray of the complete season years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go because like the Sony stuff, usually you have to go to other platforms like Apple TV and then pay for it. You know what I mean? Like each episode because usually, it's like $2 each episode. That's how it is with all the kind of Sony stuff. Because when I try to look for the Spider-Man movies, it's always like on like where you have to pay on other platforms to see it, like Apple TV or like Amazon Prime or something like that. So with Spectacular Spider-Man, I already had the DVD. I bought the DVD set a long time ago. You know what I mean? For I think Christmas one time for myself. So that's how I kind of saw it. Hunter, how did you see it?
So I got through 2 episodes today because I had hit monkey to finish up. But I just bought it on Amazon. It's like $8 a season. People, $16. Just buy the fucking show. Like it's fine. It's great.
Yeah,
You will.
yeah,
You
$16 for 26 episodes of content. That's a steal.
Yeah, it really is. Just buy the goddamn show. So I watched Natural Selection because as I mentioned, because I really enjoyed that episode. And then I watched Group Therapy. That was the other one I watched. I remember these two episodes really sticking out to me. But yeah, I just bought it. But I did see, I think it's on Netflix in Japan.
Yes, it's available internationally on Netflix.
Yeah. Which, get a VPN, people. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, you can do that. Always get a VPN, change your, information, and then watch it.
Yeah, one of the VPNs sponsor us, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So, excuse me, real quick. So yeah, with the series Spectacular Spider-Man, we did a poll. We did that in the '90s series. I was mainly leaning towards doing the Spectacular series anyway because it's shorter. It's 2 seasons and not 5 seasons like the '90s series. So that's helpful that it's less kind of less time there to watch and to review it, which is nice. And with this series, Nick said this is the definitive Spider-Man for him. So just to kind of explain and kind of set up the show a little bit with Spectacular, why do you say that?
Well, I say that because when I used to read a lot of some of the older Spider-Man books, including the original Ditko run, and then later with Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man, I kind of grew up with like the younger, snarkier Spider-Man, but with the villains that a great thing about the show, villains that show up later are always like ever present. Like characters like Flint Marko and Alex O'Hearn, they're in the pilot episode. The character who eventually becomes Shocker is a villain in one of the episodes. Adrian Toomes is in the background. You see the slow evolution of Otto Octavius becoming Doc Ock. It has one of the best Venom arcs I've ever seen in a Spider-Man adaptation. The thing that works about the show so well is it allows it to build. It builds up its villains, and it allows Peter Parker to slowly level up his powers and his skills as Spider-Man.
Yeah. So with this series, it takes place, where he's already Spider-Man when it opens up. He's coming into I think it's his freshman or junior year.
I think it's like his sophomore or junior year of high school.
Yeah, sophomore.
I thought it was junior, but yeah, around there.
Okay. So he's somewhere around there in high school. He's been being Spider-Man for a bit. It's funny because the series opens up and Peter's like, hey, listen, I've been Spider-Man, been doing that over the summer, and now I'm more confident. High school's gonna be different. I'm gonna come into things. I'm gonna rock the stuff. And then of course he's Peter Parker, so life is life. So he comes in there in high school and things are still
and of course it goes horribly wrong. As it typically does for Peter Parker, which I think like the ideal Spider-Man, it's kind of also paying a love letter to John Hughes and those kind of high school coming of age stories. And that's kind of the tone I felt that they were going for here.
Yeah, very much so. I think that was also one of the inspirations John Watts said when he was doing Homecoming and the MCU Spider-Man films was John Hughes was a big inspiration behind it. There's even one sequence in Homecoming which emulates the Ferris Bueller's Day Off when he's running through the neighborhood and stuff like that. And
then pick a Homecoming dance getting ready montage.
Yeah. So very much that '80s kind of nostalgia of that kind of the romantic teen comedy movie, and things like that. So, you had those kind of stuff in the Spider-Man movies there with Homecoming, and with this, like you said, he tries to come in. He thinks like, okay, things are different now. He tries to talk to the popular girl at school, but they're just disgusted by him. They call him Pewdy Parker, Geeky Parker, just the nerd and everything like that.
Pewdy Parker's a good one, to be fair.
Yeah, Pewdy Parker is actually
that's a good one.
yeah. MCU Flash Thompson needs to step up his game. Penis Parker, come on, that's not even clever.
He calls him Dickwad. That's not clever, but that's something a high schooler would say.
Fair.
Yeah. And then you have the bully Flash Thompson. And it seems like, because in this series, you have, Harry Osborne, you have Gwen Stacy, you have Liz Allen, you have, Mary J. Watson, who eventually comes into the series as well, who are usually, Peter's friends. Gwen, Harry, Eddie Brock also shows up, who's like a freshman in college.
Yeah, which is something that we need to get to when talking about how this show has my favorite interpretation of Venom.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so you
Interesting.
have his friends, and it's kind of funny because like the stuff they did with Harry in this show, him kind of using his money to be more popular. It's kind of like what they did with Flash Thompson in the MCU movies. It's just he just uses his money to just make people like him and bully people basically, and kind of that. So I thought that was kind of interesting parallels there between the two. But yeah, I mean, with this series, I think it's great work done. It's great voice work from everybody. It's great seeing a lot of people from the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery when it comes to villains. Like you see Shocker, you see Rhino, you see Doc Ock, all get introduced in the first season of the show. And it's kind of different arcs through the show. The first arc I would say is kind of more kind of Peter and kind of more of a personal battle. Him, with Aunt May, where of course, they're financially struggling. Also, he has to make it home, at 10, so he has to try to really struggle to
Yeah,
balance.
he's a
this
high
life.
schooler, so he's got a curfew,
Yeah,
and that's something that I feel like needed to be more explored with this character. It's because he is this great superhero, but he also has very real world problems. Like he's one of the only superheroes that has to worry about paying his rent. He's got to worry about like making a home for his aunt.
yeah,
Yeah.
and great voice work by Josh Keaton, who does Peter Parker. Uh,
Yes.
he does a very very good job at that. And so I think in the other arc comes with Harry, where eventually Harry Osborn becomes the Green Goblin, and people know
Or
that
does he?
which was pretty cool.
Nice.
Uh, you
Yeah,
know,
and yes, and I think the show it does a great job of playing with expectations and with subversion of said and with subversion of said expectations, especially towards the latter half of the first season with the Green Goblin arc. Who and the Green Goblin, who I think is voiced wonderfully by Steve Blum.
Agreed.
yeah. And then the final part is the Venom arc, where you see the
Yes,
symbiote come.
with the black suit, the symbiote, and a very like cool, interesting design. Because originally the symbiote is just the color palette swap version of his original suit, and as episodes progress, it becomes more and more of the Venom design.
Yeah, I thought that was really
A
interesting.
really cool visual storytelling going on.
Hunter, since you haven't seen it in a while, what do you mostly remember about the Spider-Man's particular Spider-Man series?
So what I remember the most is the Venom arc, because there's a point where the show pretty much goes, we're heading this direction. And again, being such a Spider-Man nerd, my my definitive, and this is kind of unfair, but I'm gonna put it out there because I think they'll stick the landing. I think Spider-Man 2 the game is gonna nail that Venom origin just off the teaser. I'm like, oh fuck, give me this right now.
Same, and just because they got the motherfucking Candyman himself, Tony Todd,
that helps.
as the voice.
That helps too. Like, I played that trailer on my TV. My cat ran out of the room. He's like, "What the fuck?" Is that?
I was on it. My dog was like,
yeah. But right now, I'd say my outside of that, Ultimate Spider-Man. I fucking love that Venom origin in Ultimate Spider-Man. It's one of the few good things about the Ultimate Universe, because there's a lot of misses in the Ultimate Universe, but the way they handle Venom is so well done, and it does make
because initially Peter and Eddie Brock are friends. They are childhood friends. They grew up together. They looked out for each other when they were coming up in high school. And I think the show does a fantastic job of driving that wedge between them, eventually turning it into complete disdain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and something that I think no other version of Venom has done really is organically build up that hatred of both Peter and Spider-Man in with the Eddie Brock character.
Exactly, and that for me, and hot take, that's one of the reasons I prefer Spider-Man rogues to Batman rogues, because Spider-Man's best villains are the ones that are like have personal connections to him. So when that turn happens, you're like, God damn, like the Lizard one is fucking heartbreaking, because you're like,
yes,
oh man,
I remember like watching this video a long time ago. It was about young John, and it was dealing with that therapy episode after that alien invasion, and it's a lot of critics talk about when the show turned from a good show to a great show, to when it became fucking phenomenal, and I had to see every single episode. Natural Selection is that for me, because that transformation of Kurt Connors, it is heartbreaking, and like with so many Spider-Man comic resolutions, it's kind of bittersweet, because yes, Spider-Man managed to save Kurt Connors, but he also profited off of that whole interaction, and he lost the trust of his friends and his job.
Yeah. That's where the rift kind of starts between, Eddie Brock and Peter Parker, because he is trying to, make money.
Yeah, and something that happens with Spider-Man is like, even when he wins, he still kind of loses.
Yeah. And, he's trying to take these photos to win this contest so he can win money, so he can, help his aunt out. He's trying to, do a good job trying to set up his OnlyFans, trying to get the right shot, make sure he's getting the right angles. Sometimes it's tough.
And real quick, we got to shout out this show's take on J. Jonah Jameson, who I think is played by Darren Norris, who has one of my favorite lines of a manager ever. It was like, how about 2 words? Scram, kid! Or 17! Get out of my office in 4.2 seconds or I'll stable you to a flagpole! and everyone's just like stunned. I was like, how did you count?
Yeah.
Jonah's such a dick. He's such an asshole.
Yes, but just like with the greatest versions of that character, you see humanity. Like, he hides Peter Parker. He, like, sees him out the corner of his eye when the Rhino's trying to fuck him up, and he's just like, go, wait, out.
Yeah. Just like what happened, and there's a lot of kind of homages to the Raimi Spider-Man, because that was also a moment in the Raimi Spider-Man where Green Goblin's got him by the neck, and he's asking where Peter Parker is, and he also hid his identity there. So there are some times where it's like, J. Jonah Jameson does have these moments where he can be a cool guy, good guy, maybe deep down. And so I thought that good. There's also a train sequence in this as well. That you saw. It's like, I guess Spider-Man and trains is like Superman with planes. You know what I mean? You always got to have. Sometimes you got to throw in a Superman plane scene in a Superman movie, because that's just the thing. From all the way back to with the Christopher Reeve Superman. You got to do that. And for a show that came out in 2008, the animation still looks really good.
Yes, it does.
The animation holds up, and I think it's an issue because I think a lot of people were turned off of the show from jump because of the way the animation looked. It looked kind of a very childish, very cartoonish, but once you see it in motion, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But like, don't maybe watch an episode and not watch clips. Like, don't watch clips, people, and judge a fucking show. Like, actually give it an episode or two. Like, I hate when people go like, oh, I've seen a clip, and so I know. It's like, no, you need to actually give the storytelling, because you're doing a disservice to the animators by just saying, oh, I saw a 30-second clip, I know how this goes. No, you don't. Actually give it a chance. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So we discussed a lot about Peter Parker. Just want to get in, we did a little bit with J. Jonah Jameson, and let's segue that into kind of more of the characters in the show. People like Liz Allen, Gwen Stacy. This was, I think, was this my first introduction to Liz Allen before the 90s, before I went back and saw the 90s show? I'm trying to think. Can't really remember, because I don't remember Liz Allen that heavily much in the 90s show, but I remember her here that much. And
I think in the 90s show, the role Liz Allen played was filled by Felicia Hardy for a lot of it.
Yeah.
From what I remember of the 90s show.
Yeah, no, you're 1,000% correct. Like, you could easily just swap out Liz Allen for Felicia, but
and Liz Allen is a great fucking character, especially like in season 2, because the first season it's like dealing with Peter Parker and the life and trouble of being Spider-Man. And season 2, it focuses more on Peter Parker's life and the complications that come with relationships in high school, with dealing with his newfound attraction to Gwen Stacy, and the fact that Liz Allen is also into it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of one of the biggest through lines through that season.
Yeah,
Peter gets play. That's the thing.
In terms of comic books, the biggest man-hoes are Peter Parker and Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, Dick Great. Yeah, they don't call him Dick for nothing, baby. Like, I mean, but even in the Ultimate Universe, they retconned it so Jessica Jones had a thing for him, and he doesn't find that out till like a decade after he graduated. He's like, oh, that would have been nice to know. Like Peter gets play.
Can't do that in the MCU though.
Yeah. Christian Ritter fucking Tom Holland would be a little weird for our audience.
Because I remember there was like an issue in a comic, I think when he was talking to Human Torch and Johnny Storm, he was like, well, I don't know, man. I don't know. Your life doesn't seem pretty rough. You got this hot redhead chick fighting over you. You got this other, blonde chick fighting over you. I don't know. I think your life is pretty good, bro. I think you're living pretty sweet.
And they wait, and the thing that is incredible about the show, they wait to give Gwen Stacy her "she's all that" moment.
Yes, they do. By the way, whenever they race Human Torch and Peter or Spider-Man, that shit's always wonderful. It's like when the Superman and Flash race each other. You're just like, all right, give me this shit. But yeah, Peter's fine. He's fine.
And then with this Liz Allen, I don't know if it's supposed to be she's black or Latina, or cause she sounds kind of Latina.
She's voiced by Alana Ubach, who I think is a Latina, and she was she played a Mama Imelda Coco.
Okay. And then in Homecoming they did have Liz Allen, where she was played by a black woman, Laura Harrier. She was absolutely stunning in that. I remember there. So I was wondering if they maybe had Liz Allen be maybe black or a woman of color, because maybe it was like that in the Spectacular Spider-Man series, maybe. Wonder how much inspiration they got there. But the way Liz Allen starts off, she's completely bitchy to Peter Parker. You know what I mean? Because he's the loser, he's the nerd.
It's that typical high school arc. It's like, oh, you're a nerd? Get out of my face.
You know what I mean? She's flunking biology, you know what I mean? And he, his teacher's like, hey, why don't you tutor her? And, she's completely ignoring him and disregarding him. And then the only time she takes interest, and when he just completely just roasts her, disregards her, it's like, well, hey, listen.
You know what? I don't need this shit. You're on your own. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the...
Well, he should have, by the way.
Yeah. In that moment, I was like, good for you, Peter.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Let anyone treat you like that, guy or girl. Like,
Yeah, it's like, hey, listen, I'm not the one failing, you failing. I mean, so I don't really have to be here. Yeah, you're the one that got a D, I got an A+. I mean, hey, I don't have to be here, so I'm getting out of here. And then at that moment, it was like, oh wow, he talked to me like that. Like, wow, you know what I mean? Like,
that's probably the biggest compliment I can give the show is the zingers that he has when he's Spider-Man.
It's some of the funniest Spider-Man dialogue I've ever heard.
Yes, are great. Like, you're like, God damn, like Peter, like that's Peter's probably his biggest superpower. I know everyone said, web swing and all that, but the reason why Spider-Man is able to win fights outside of just his powers is that he is able to distract his opponents because he's talking shit constantly. I mean,
it's just as satisfying when said villains dish it back. Especially, I think there's a couple fights with the Sandman in season 2 where they're talking shit to each other, and it feels like they have a rapport going, and it's so much fun to listen to. Especially because I think John DiMaggio, he is the voice of Flint Marko in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you also have, like I said, we had Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane. How do you all think Mary Jane is portrayed in the show?
I think she's portrayed perfectly fine. I think MJ is supposed to be that that final love interest for Peter Parker. He's only supposed to get with her after he's and did things with Liz Allen and the eventual death of Gwen Stacy. I think that's supposed to be, but I think as she is on the show as a background character, occasional confidant, friend, part-time love interest, I think she's wonderfully portrayed here.
Yeah.
At least she's not a constant damsel in distress or like constantly cheating on Peter like the Raimi MJ is.
Thank you. Yeah, like the thing is, like, once you introduce MJ like as a Spider-Man, fan, your brain automatically kind of goes to, okay, they're gonna end up together. We're kind of on a clock as to when. But the show does a very good job of gradually bringing it along, so it doesn't undercut the other relationships that he has going on, which is a really hard line to balance, and I give the show a lot of credit for being able to do that. But yeah, Mary Jane feels like her own character independent of Peter, which is another thing that's horribly important, so that you actually give a shit when they get together, and the show does a great job of doing that.
Yeah. And when she shows up, he's like, "Oh wow, you're Mary Jane."
It's that, yeah, because one of the funnier bits is because it's Aunt May trying to set him up with MJ. He's like, "Well, she has a wonderful personality," and it's like, that's typical of shitty high school boys. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, you know what I mean. He sees her and she's some buxom, redhead, and it's like, wow, black dress, like shows up for,
god damn,
because he has to take her to the homecoming dance, and he has to take a date, and it shows up, Mary Jane. Everybody's just stunned that he shows up with Mary Jane. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, this gorgeous woman, puny Parker. You know what I mean? Nerd Parker showed up with Mary Jane there. And then, you have kind of, other characters like Norman Osborn. I forgot how much of an asshole Norman Osborn was in this.
Norman Osborn was a supervillain long before he became the Green Goblin. He reminded me so much of like Logan Roy from Succession.
Maybe
I was just waiting on him to just like, goodbye, fuck off.
Yeah, he's Al Bundy, but not funny. Like, he really is just like such a shitty parent.
He's Al Bundy, but an asshole.
Yeah, well, I mean, more of an asshole. Yeah, but it's a perfect personification of nature versus nurture, because the way he treats Harry, it's like, okay, you're either going to shoot up a school or you're going to be a supervillain, or maybe both? Question mark. So when things go down the way they do, you're like, well, yeah, this kind of makes sense, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, the constant just degrading of Harry, just everything he does is like, it's like, well, you could have maybe got an A+, but you got an A instead, just that mentality of nothing is ever good enough for his father. And even when he's, happy,
I'm surprised they didn't make Norman Osborn an Asian parent in this.
Maybe in the reboot, maybe they'll do that, the disapproving Asian parent.
It's like, an A. Why not an A+?
Yeah, played by Scarlett Johansson. Very nice. I love to see that. I'm telling you, Scarlett Johansson. There's already talk she may be coming back in the Marvel universe. We're doing something for Disney. Maybe she's gonna come back, do some other stuff. Hey, Letitia Wright.
She'll direct the movie. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson is Shuri. Why the fuck?
Yeah, she's gonna replace her. You know what I mean? They're like, fuck it. Yeah, why not? You're gonna play a black.
Cool. 15... You vaccinated? Awesome. Let's go.
Yeah,
Right.
You know what I mean. So yeah, maybe. I mean, just like that mentality of him and his, his father, just that relationship. Even when he's, like, hey, I'm getting great grades at school. I got 4.0 GPA. I'm the star on the football team. I went to the prom with this attractive girl, and he's trying to tell his dad, and all he says, just get out. You know what I mean? I'm busy. I don't want to hear you. Not even come back later. Just get out. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus.
I'm running Oscorp, motherfucker.
It's like, fuck off. Goodbye.
And
yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, Norman is basically Vince McMahon, and Harry Osborn is Shane. Like, he just needs a hug from his dad. Like, I have $1 billion empire to run. Fuck you and your feelings.
Yeah. And the series, Oscorp is kind of mostly responsible for a lot of the Spider-Man villains in the series, like Doc Ock.
Mhm.
You also see like
Yeah, which which is that something that was pulled from Ultimate Spider-Man? Because I think a
Yes.
lot of elements from that comic are translated here.
Yeah, they take. I don't want to even say
They borrow
literal, like
generously
they
from Ultimate
do, but
Spider-Man.
at the same time though, let's be real. Like once Alexa turns into Ultron, we'll all connect everything to Amazon or Google anyway. And be like, well, this is how the end of humanity started. This is why we
Once
now
your
live in
once your Alexa starts singing, "I've had strings, but now I'm free."
Dude, that's why I don't want self-driving cars. Like people are like, I would totally want one of those. Like you don't put premium in it. It's like, oh, look at this overpass, Michael, vroom, and you go all the time. Like, no, fuck that.
yeah. So yeah, a lot of villains are kind of created by their Oscorp. So you'll see that in the show. That's kind of very heavy. Yeah. I mean, this is a really great show. Really great characterizations of everybody.
Would you say it's spectacular?
Spectacular, amazing. You know what I mean? Of a show. Yeah, I give it a very, very strong tune in for this. I mean, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend checking it out. Buying the box set you can get because I think it's worth looking back. You know what I mean? And I mean, Spider-Man fans, I mean, eating good right now. You got the PS4 Spider-Man game, the Miles Morales game.
Play both of those, by the way.
Yep, you got those. You got.
Yep, Into the Spider-Verse. You got No Way Home coming out next week. You got Across the Spider-Verse coming out next year. You got PS4, PS5 Spider-Man 2 coming out the year after.
Oh god, oh, it's gonna be so good.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I was trying to see. So, were there any ideas of what they were going to do for season 3 of Spectacular Spider-Man?
A potential season 3 was setting up a lot because you see characters like Cletus Cassidy in the background. You see other characters. You see potentially the return of Tombstone coming back. You see the further antagonism of the Green Goblin potentially setting up the death of Gwen Stacy.
Yeah. So this definitely with the addition of Gwen Stacy, her neck is going. That neck is going to get snapped. I mean, for sure. You got to see that. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what they would have did with the season 3. Hey, man, if they can bring back X-Men the animated series from the 90s, hey, they can certainly bring back Spectacular.
right.
You know what I mean?
Like at this point, things about streaming, it's kind of open season on what could come back.
Yeah, who would have thought that Young Justice would have come back after like almost a decade off the air, and HBO Max comes and brings it back.
Now, I will say, as far as animated shows that should come back, bring back that fucking Green Lantern DC show that they had, which no one fucking watched, I feel like. And I was like, hey, please keep this shit going. And they canceled it after one season. It's on HBO Max, and that's worth your time.
Is it that CGI one?
Yes.
Okay.
I like the pieces they were setting up, like they were setting up Sinestro to make his turn. I'm just like, okay, like this is all really great shit. And then Cartoon Network was like, nah, we're good. Like, no more. It's like, god damn it.
As they do.
Yeah, as they do. I will throw a bit of a curveball. I think the most underrated version of Spider-Man in animated form is the 2000s MTV CGI version that they did, where Neil Patrick Harris voiced Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I actually own that complete series, and rewatching it, villain dies like straight up first episode. I was like, oh fuck. And what ends up being the series finale is such a fucking cliffhanger. I was like, well, fuck, it would have been great if this came back for the second season instead of this bullshit ending that you gave me. But watch the Electro episode if you haven't watched it.
The Electro episode is it fucked me up.
It's amazing. it's an amazing origin story, which just makes me hate the Amazing Spider-Man 2 even more. But yeah, watch that if you haven't watched it. I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. So Nick, what would you give rating for Spectacular Spider-Man?
Spectacular Spider-Man. This will probably go down in history as my absolute favorite interpretation of this character. It allows its villains to slowly build up over the course of its season. It does an amazing job of delving into the character of Peter Parker and showing off why this character has stood the test of time for like 60, 70 years since the 1960s with the Steve Ditko version, and how he keeps coming back after guys like Dan Slott have tried to tank him into the ground.
Yeah.
Hunter, yeah, this is a strong tune-in.
Yeah. What about you, Hunter?
Yeah, so I will say for myself, Spider-Man was the second comic I've read. First one was X-Men when I was 5. I've grown up with this character. I love this character. I think the definitive, probably the definitive is the PS4 game. I just can't remember the last time a Spider-Man, like, it checks every fucking box for Spider-Man. It's just like, goddamn, you're hitting every fucking beat. And that last boss battle is just heartbreaking and beautiful, and it gives a giant middle finger to One More Day, which I'm always a fan of. With a decision that Peter makes that you just go, yep, this is why you're Spider-Man. Like, goddamn it, game. And the Miles Morales game is a perfect complement. It's a perfect bookend. You really should play them back to back, honestly. But I'd give this a very strong tune in. This is something you can watch with your kids. And if your kids aren't familiar with the character and you kind of want to introduce them, this is a perfect entryway to go like, hey, let's see what you think about this. And then you could move on to the 90s cartoon or Ultimate Spider-Man. Don't worry, Drake Bell's in jail. This
is kind of like the perfect introduction to Spider-Man for kids. It has very grounded, very serious subject matter in the terms of because at least in season 2, it delves into like addiction and complications with relationships and gang crime and feelings of regret. It delves into those beautifully without ever talking down to young kids who might be watching it.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect thing to show like a 10 or 11-year-old, like right when you're about to hit middle school. I think this is a perfect introduction right around that age to be like, hey, do you like Spider-Man? Like, let's see. But there's nothing too like even saying violence wise. Like I mean, there's definitely some great fights. Do not misunderstand. But I think as far as like something scaring kids, maybe the Venom shit might get them a little bit, but outside of that, I think it's pretty accessible to kids.
Yeah, and the penultimate episode of season 1, where it is doing the Peter breaking away from the symbiote, and you do see flashes of his origin story. That is up there with my favorite episodes of television ever.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.